Numbers don't panic, people do. Let's look at the psychology driving today's market. The dangerous part of calm is not quiet prices themselves, but the shared assumptions that can gather underneath them. When movement narrows, participants may stop asking what could break the consensus. Calm can feel like proof, even though it may simply reflect agreement about the same limited range of outcomes. That distinction matters because confidence changes behavior. It can encourage similar positioning, thinner protection, and less attention to scenarios that would force many participants to adjust at once. The central question is therefore not whether calm predicts a collapse. It does not. The question is how shared confidence can make a later adjustment feel abrupt rather than gradual. Think of confidence as coordination without a meeting. Separate participants can reach similar conclusions, choose similar exposures, and become vulnerable to the same surprise while believing they acted independently. This episode follows that coordination loop. Confidence narrows expectations, narrow expectations concentrate responses, and a challenge to the shared story can create a rush to reconsider what previously felt settled. A quiet market can contain very different conditions. It may reflect balanced information, patient participation, strong liquidity, or merely a temporary lack of disagreement expressed through transactions. That is why calm should not be treated as hidden panic. Price movement records completed transactions. It does not directly reveal confidence, fear, preparation, or the private reasoning behind each decision. The psychological issue begins when participants interpret stability as evidence that their own assumptions are increasingly safe. The absence of contradiction can then become mistaken for confirmation. Notice the distinction. A stable outcome and a stable belief are not the same thing. Prices may remain calm while the beliefs supporting current positions become more uniform and less frequently questioned. Uniformity can reduce visible conflict for a while, yet it may also reduce the number of participants prepared to absorb an opposing move, especially when many plans depend on similar conditions continuing. The crowd creates the feedback. Confidence encourages alignment. Alignment makes calm appear stronger, and that appearance can reinforce confidence again without establishing that the underlying assumptions are correct. To understand the mechanism, separate 4 layers: the story participants believe, the positions they hold, the liquidity available for adjustment, and the price response when those layers stop fitting together. The story supplies an explanation for calm. It might say risk is contained, uncertainty is manageable, or familiar relationships remain dependable. Conceptually, the exact story matters less than its coordinating effect. Positioning translates belief into exposure. 2 participants may describe the market differently yet still depend on the same outcome, creating hidden similarity beneath apparently diverse explanations. Liquidity determines how easily those exposures can change. A belief can be revised privately in an instant, while a position may require a willing counterparty and a tolerable price to be reduced. Price is where those revisions become observable. The chart does not measure emotion directly. It records transactions that may have been shaped by shared expectations and changing constraints. These layers can move separately. Confidence may weaken before positions change. Positions may change before the dominant story changes, and prices may move before participants agree on a new explanation. Now, this sequence prevents a common mistake, treating the trigger as the whole cause. A surprising event may begin adjustment, but crowded assumptions can influence how forcefully that adjustment travels. The relevant vulnerability is not optimism by itself. It is dependence on a narrow set of expected outcomes combined with limited flexibility when those outcomes are questioned. Shared confidence can begin with reasonable judgments. Participants observe similar conditions, use similar information, and conclude that a particular range of outcomes deserves more weight than alternatives. The mechanism becomes fragile when confidence changes from a working hypothesis into an organizing assumption. Once plans rely on it, contrary possibilities may receive less preparation rather than serious comparison. Social proof can strengthen that shift. When many informed participants appear comfortable, an individual may treat collective calm as additional evidence even when everyone is partly observing everyone else. Here is the feedback loop. The same visible stability that results from aligned expectations can then be used to justify further alignment. Cause and confirmation become difficult to separate. Risk controls can also converge conceptually. Even without identical rules, participants may react to similar thresholds, volatility changes, financing constraints, or internal pressure to reduce exposure. When those responses point in the same direction, adjustment may become self-reinforcing. Initial transactions alter price, altered price changes constraints, and changed constraints encourage additional transactions. Leverage can intensify this relationship, but it is not required. Any structure that reduces patience or flexibility can make a belief revision translate into faster position adjustment. Information cascades add another layer. Participants may infer meaning from others' actions, so a small shift is interpreted not merely as movement, but as evidence that someone else knows more. That inference can be reasonable under uncertainty. The danger appears when the observed action carries less private information than assumed, allowing imitation to amplify a weak initial signal. Confidence can therefore suppress disagreement without eliminating it. Some participants may hold doubts but avoid acting because calm prices make those doubts look premature or costly. This creates an asymmetry. Joining the prevailing view can feel socially and institutionally defensible, while opposing it may require explaining losses that occur before the shared narrative changes. Look, the crowd does not need to be foolish. Rational incentives can still produce similar positions when each participant expects others to maintain liquidity, confidence, or demand. The coordination problem appears when everyone assumes adjustment will remain orderly because other participants will behave patiently. That assumption may fail precisely when patience becomes individually expensive. Once the shared story is challenged, participants do not merely update a forecast. They may also update their beliefs about everyone else's willingness to remain positioned. Price is evidence of transactions, not a direct reading of emotion. A participant can tolerate uncertainty about value yet react quickly to uncertainty about whether many others are preparing to leave simultaneously. The result can resemble panic without proving panic. Rapid repricing may reflect constraints, strategic anticipation, liquidity withdrawal, changed fundamentals, or several forces interacting with psychological feedback. A structural explanation must come first in some cases. New information may genuinely alter expected cash flows, financing conditions, policy assumptions, or the availability of market-making capacity. Confidence can also be justified. Calm may reflect broad information, resilient balance sheets, diverse positioning, and enough liquidity to process disagreement without disorderly adjustment. A rational participant may follow the prevailing view because it remains the best available interpretation, not because social pressure has replaced independent judgment. Another limitation is observability. Similar prices do not prove similar beliefs, and similar positions do not reveal whether participants share motives, time horizons, or tolerance for loss. Psychological interpretation is therefore one lens, not a complete diagnosis. It becomes stronger when paired with evidence about positioning, incentives, liquidity, and the specific information being reassessed. A validating conceptual case is a narrow bridge carrying many weights. The bridge does not fail because weight exists. Vulnerability rises when load concentrates and alternative supports remain unused. That metaphor also shows why calm cannot identify timing. A concentrated structure may persist, adapt, or be reinforced. Nothing in the psychological pattern supplies a reliable countdown. The opening question can now be answered. Calm sometimes feels dangerous because shared confidence may coordinate assumptions and responses, making disagreement appear suddenly when conditions force it into transactions. The silence is not a forecast. It is a period in which dependencies may become less visible because the prevailing story has reduced the need to test them publicly. When that story weakens, repricing can accelerate through interaction. Belief revision changes positions, position changes alter prices, and price changes reshape beliefs about what others will do. The speed of the move may therefore reflect more than the importance of new information. It may also reflect how many decisions had been organized around the previous interpretation. Emotion can amplify the move, but emotion alone is insufficient. Constraints, liquidity, incentives, and information determine whether uncertainty becomes a mild adjustment or a reinforcing cascade. The useful insight is not that confidence causes crashes. It is that confidence can coordinate exposure, and coordinated exposure can make adaptation less independent than it first appears. This perspective also removes moral judgment. Participants can make defensible decisions individually while collectively creating a structure that reacts sharply when a shared assumption changes. The strongest resolution is conditional. The narrower the expected range and the more similar the adjustment pressures, the greater the potential for a sudden collective response under stress. Now, application begins with observation rather than prediction. Identify the dominant narrative. Then ask which positions, constraints, and expectations might depend on that narrative continuing. Separate evidence from inference. Calm transactions are observable. Complacency is an interpretation that requires support from behavior, positioning, incentives, or explicit statements rather than the chart alone. Study the herd without following it. Look for feedback between price and positioning, while remembering that visible alignment may reflect rational coordination instead of psychological imitation. Compare alternative explanations before accepting a confidence story. A structural change, liquidity shift, or fundamental revision may account for movement more directly than collective emotion. Ask what would falsify the interpretation. If positioning is diverse, liquidity remains available, and participants update independently, the confidence coordination mechanism may offer little explanatory value. Behavioral analysis should widen the questions you ask rather than narrow them into a trade. It cannot reliably determine direction, magnitude, or timing, and it does not ensure protection from loss. Observe the behavior, not the prediction. The educational value lies in recognizing dependencies between beliefs and constraints while refusing to turn a psychological pattern into financial advice. The final implication is practical but bounded. Test narratives, inspect coordination, and preserve uncertainty in your explanation. Markets can remain calm, change gradually, or reprice sharply for many interacting reasons. Numbers don't panic, and calm does not confess what lies beneath it. Study the assumptions, the structure, and the limits of your interpretation. Don't follow the herd. Study it. See you next time.